Bryan Fischer here for D1 Ticker and Collegiate Sports Connect. Thrilled to welcome in Dr. Mark Emmert, the NCAA president. And Mark, it's mere hours left in your tenure. I'm sure some conflicting emotions now as your time winds down there at the national office.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm done at the end of business day Tuesday, so I'm heading into the finish line here, and I'm conflicted about it. Of course, I've loved what I've done. It's been really exciting. On the other hand, I'm excited for Charlie to come in and see what he can do. I think he's going to be a terrific president, and so it's a great time to turn a page and let him take over and me go do something else.
Now, about 22 months ago, your contract was extended by the board. You announced about a year later that you're stepping down. Well, why walk away now?
Well, it made great sense in many respects. As you may recall, I, along with a handful of other leaders from within the association, called for a constitutional convention about 2 years ago to sit down and look at what we really needed to do. It was clear that incremental change is no longer sufficient to keep up with all of the progress that was going on in the world around us. And so the constitution of the association needed to really be revisited. I'd been advocating a delegation of greater authority and responsibility to the conferences and the schools. We were able to put that in place. The membership voted on it about 9 months later and approved it overwhelmingly. So now we found ourselves in a place where the governance structure, the way decisions get made, can be done in a different fashion, and it made great sense to let a new leader come in and take over at that stage.
A dozen years at the helm, I'm sure it was quite taxing for you as well. What are some of the memorable things that you kind of fondly look back at during your tenure?
Well, sure, it was taxing, but on the other hand, it was also incredibly invigorating, and that's the part that's the best piece of it, and that's always around the athletes themselves. You know, getting to watch and be part of, even in an administrative fashion, the championships and seeing what it means to the athletes is incredible. And I was able over those 12 years to meet thousands of athletes on their campuses, typically, big schools, small schools, everything in between. And that was just a sheer joy, you know, to sit down with all the athletes in a D3 school or, you know, Ohio State. It didn't matter how big or small it was, and listen to them, talk to them, hear what was working for them, what wasn't, what they liked about their experience, and what they would like to improve. That was really valuable to me, and I'm going to miss that a great deal.
Everybody kind of looks back on their tenure, certainly some things that they would have liked to do a little bit differently. Anything when you look back in retrospect that you would have changed, or any regrets that you have?
Well, I don't know about regrets, but I certainly hope change. I hope I always look back and say, gee, you know, I've learned from this or that, and I've got better at you know, this element or that element of a job. I'm certainly more familiar with and more thoughtful about issues than 12 years ago. And I hope I'm the same 12 years from now. That's the way life should be. I guess I would point Bryan to, you know, the disinclination to be patient. And I know that sounds odd since the NCAA is so slow moving as an entity, not the NCAA national office. There's this belief that the NCAA national office is slow and bureaucratic and all of that. The reality is the association, as you know, as your audience knows, it is a membership organization. It's a democratic representative governance, and that's just slow. And it took me a while in my early years to realize, okay, look, you got to bring hundreds and hundreds of people on board before you can make a decision. And, you know, I probably should have gone in knowing that instead of coming in and trying to drive change early on faster than possible. I could have learned from that. You know, certainly at the same time, I would change some of the things we did around communication of what the NCAA is. Most people just don't get it. They don't, and that's not a knock on them. It's the fact that collectively, all of college sports has done a bad job communicating what the NCAA is as a membership organization. And secondly, we've done a poor job from the campus level on up of talking about the support and commitment that everybody has for the athletes. It's downright painful, and I mean that word specifically, to hear people say or comment that a school or a conference or the association or me don't care about athletes, that we're, quote, exploiting athletes, that this is all about trying to take advantage of athletes. I've watched thousands of people work hard to make sure athletes have what they want and what they need to be successful as men and women. And we just didn't do as well at communicating what that was all about. And I'd like to go back and change that if it was possible.
We heard a lot of those criticisms from members of Congress. You've been in front of Congress quite a bit over these last couple of years. When you kind of look back at specifically your dealings on the Hill, what's kind of the biggest obstacle in your mind and viewpoint in terms of actually getting something done there with Congress?
Well, getting anything done with Congress right now in pretty much any political arena, frankly, is just really, really hard because of the politics of the moment in America, and trying to get 60 senators and a majority of House members to agree on anything complicated is just hard work. There's a lot of great members of Congress, a lot of senators and representatives who really, really care about college sports. They want it to work well. They know that something needs to be done at the federal level. You can't do this at the state level, but trying to get agreement there is harder than inside the NCAA. So it's very difficult to get done. Now, Charlie Baker has got a lifetime of political experience, and I think he's going to bring that to bear in this particular case. But I was able to spend a lot of time with a lot of members of Congress and senators, and we had lots of really productive conversations. They're primed and ready to go. And my hope is that even with the difficulties out there, that Charlie can get some things done on the Hill. It is utterly essential that we have some national legislation passed that creates a landscape, just an ecosystem that college sports can operate in. You get critics out there saying, well, the NCAA is just begging for Congress to solve the problems. That's not true at all. But the legal environment right now won't allow the NCAA to the association, not the office, the association, to solve those problems without some change in that environment. It can't run college sports with 30 or 40 different state rules around NIL or pay for play or anything else. And that's where it's heading right now. And Congress needs to act on this.
You mentioned that legal environment, and I'm kind of curious, going back a little bit to that Alston decision with the Supreme Court, right? Blocks there away from the Capitol. When you read that, what was kind of going through your head, and did it truthfully kind of cause a little bit of self-reflection in terms of maybe this was the wrong kind of strategy from a legal perspective with the NCAA?
Not at all. And the reason is that we were embroiled, and the association continues to be embroiled in lawsuits. No shortage of lawsuits that are being brought against the association. And what was necessary, and still is clarity on what is the legal landscape. And I said, going into that case, and even while it was in the hands of the court, that obviously you want to win, and you sure as heck don't want to lose 9-0 in a Supreme Court case. But what was essential was clarity, and losing 0-9 is sure as heck clarity, right? You now know what the landscape is, and that has a lot of utility in it. So it was the right thing to do. Had the plaintiffs and us, the defendants in that case, not wanted to go to the Supreme Court, it would have wound up there sooner or later. We would have just spent more time and more money getting there, and more confusion about what the legal environment is trying to get there. So having the Supreme Court weigh in, while it was very, very disappointing, we know we've made the best arguments. We had arguably the best lawyer in the country, arguing the case for the Supreme Court, arguing the case in the court, and we got the outcome we got. So it was necessary, and I'm glad we pushed it through.
Recently heard a lot of the arguments in some early arguments in the Johnson case. Is that issue of athletes and student athletes becoming employees of their university kind of the biggest challenge the organization faces moving forward?
There's no question in my mind that it's absolutely the biggest issue facing college sports. I've always said that the most important variable, if you will, in college sports is defining the relationship between the athletes and the universities. What is this activity all about? What is it that the universities are trying to achieve here? And what do they want to do? Is this about bringing in young men and women to your school and having them be a part of your institution and developing them as human beings, as an educational institution? Or is this just sports entertainment? If it's just sports entertainment, well, now you're in a professional sports league, and fine. Maybe there's interest in that, maybe not. But if those athletes are now considered employees, just like any other employee of a university, you've got a completely different relationship than you've had. And I know there are those that advocate for it and those that say, yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it should be. And that's fine. They get to argue that. But should that ever occur, that will completely change college sports. And people need to look beyond just the top 50 football teams or the top 100 basketball teams. They need to look at, what does that mean for 500,000 young men and women? What does that mean for 1,100 schools? And what does it mean for 22 other sports than just football and men's basketball? And I think that's where people miss the picture, the big picture in all of this. So I think it's got to get resolved. I think that is an area where Congress will have to weigh in, because you got some states that are weighing in right now, and you're going to wind up with that same crazy quilt of some states doing this, some states doing that, and it's got to get resolved.
A lot of those states, because they are doing different things, a lot of it has been NIL focus, which has been really one of the biggest changes, especially to student athletes under your tenure. I guess if you could maybe look back a little bit at NIL and how much of an impact it's had on those student athletes that you've been dealing with, and ultimately maybe also why hasn't the NCAA maybe moved as fast as maybe you would have liked to when it comes to dealing with NIL?
Yeah, so look, this has been the most impactful change in college sports probably since its creation, at least in my read of history. And a lot of it's really constructive, right? That a young man or young woman can go on and monetize their name, image, and likeness, use their likeness in promoting activities, whether it's running a camp or writing a book or singing a song or just endorsing a product, is for the most part, in my view, a very, very good thing. And I was very pleased to see that we're able to move as far as we have, even though it has come in this herky-jerky way. And it took a long time for a lot of us, me included, to get our arms around the idea that, okay, we can figure out how to make this work. The work that began back in, gosh, I've lost track of time now, pre-COVID, so 19, I guess, in 2018, 19, around all of this. If you remember way back then, Bryan, we brought in, I put together a working group that Val Ackerman and Gene Smith co-chaired, and they worked really, really hard. They produced, I thought, some really strong proposals about how to try and get our arms around this, even as states were passing new laws. That was all good, but got up to the January where all of that would have been passed, hopefully would have been passed, and a couple of conferences were balking really strongly at it and really concerned about it, and it wasn't clear where they were going to wind up. And then similarly, the Department of Justice weighed in and said, wait a minute, we don't like your transfer rules and we don't like this NIL thing. We want to look at it. So those two things together, some impactful conferences saying, I don't know whether we want to do this or not, and then the DOJ stepping in, meant that at that moment in time, December 19, as my memory serves, we had to just stop and say, this isn't going to pass, and we're going to have DOJ in the midst of it. We got to stop. And that was really regrettable. I would have very much liked to have taken the work that Gene and Val did, and Bob Bowlesby was in there. A whole bunch of people were in there working really hard on that. That would have been the right time to do it, but we couldn't get it through the membership.
A lot of impactful enforcement decisions. Is enforcement challenges, are those kind of more present than ever, and tough to kind of get your grips on, really as the association deals with a lot of issues in that area?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really frustrating for everybody in the whole enforcement. Let's just say all of regulation and that whole regulatory space. There's a group of people in the national office. There's a group of volunteers in the Committee on Infractions and in other parts of the membership that just are great. First of all, they're great people and they work incredibly hard. They're badly misunderstood. And the metaphor that I like is to just say, look, we all know you can't play a game without officials on the court. And nobody cheers the officials when they come on. Nobody cheers the officials when they come off. But they know you can't have the game without them. And at the same time, the only time you ever speak to the official is to boo them, right? To yell at them. Nobody has a pleasant conversation with them, but they're critical to the conduct of the game. The same thing's true on a systemic basis, and that's what that regulatory space is all about. I think, and I've said this in a number of places, but I think that it would be really useful and constructive to split those two functions apart. The NCAA is the only entity where both the regulatory arm and the championship arm, the sport promoting arm, are jammed together. We should separate them, still report into the governance structure, still report to the board, still be an integral part of college sports, but they should literally be different brands. And they need to work hand in hand, but more people know the NCAA. Well, I don't know whether it's more or less, but as many people know the NCAA because of the regulatory space and think that that's not supporting athletes as the championship space, which is ludicrous, but that's the way it is. So separate those two, sort of like the Olympics has done with dope testing, right? With anti-doping, and separate those two things so that you know that you got those functions functioning. The people that work so hard in the regulatory space can get all the support they want. You're no longer complicating it and convoluting it with your championship brand. Pull those things apart. That would work really, really well. And that's not been something the membership has supported up to this point, but maybe this is a good time because of those challenges you're talking about.
Seen a massive amount of change in college athletics, especially at the D1 level and in the Power Five during your tenure, from realignment to really the return of play during COVID. A bit of disjointed and tough to kind of bring everybody together in terms of the national office's kind of voice. Why hasn't it been stronger? I guess these last couple of years.
Well, it hasn't been stronger because the membership's been all over the place, right? The national office is a convening entity. It's not as if I or any president can stand up and say, look, damn it, we're going to do X, we're going to do Y. That's just not the way it was ever set up to operate. The association today, and this is reaffirmed by the new Constitution, is driven by the university presidents who form the board of governors, or in the D1 case, the board of directors, and the authority ultimately lies there. The president of the NCAA has a lot of convening power, has a lot of a bully pulpit, but the authority lies with the schools, and the new Constitution makes it clear that it also lies with conferences. It has been the case for 13 years, and it'll be the case for the next 13 years, that if the Power Five conferences agree on something, then you can get something done. If they don't agree on something, then you're not going to get something done. And it is because of their ability to agree or disagree. You've got to really find a way to move forward, to make rule changes and policy changes. That's where the model is focused.
But nothing would have been kind of stopping you if you would have been a little bit more proactive, right?
Well, proactive in what sense? I mean, we certainly were as proactive as possible around COVID. I think we handled COVID extremely well. We did, I think, a really good job of managing all that with the schools and conferences and everybody else. We certainly have driven an enormous amount of change around the support that athletes get. You look at where we were 10 years ago to where we are today. The support and academic support, financial support, health and safety support, all of those things have gone into place, and it's been very, very positive. Now, who's going to stand up and take credit for that? Should it be the president of the association? Should it be the schools that are actually doing the hard work? Where's that get resolved? And the reality is that the national office and me personally have been in the middle of all of that. But I don't know that the president should stand up and say, "Yay, look what I got done. That's great." It's the schools that do it, the schools that coach, the schools that deliver the goods. That's where the credit belongs.
Well, it certainly does, and it's something that your successor, Governor Baker, is going to have to kind of get his hands around. I know it's been typical for leaders to kind of pass a note, I guess, to their successors and offer a little bit of advice. What are you kind of telling Governor Baker as he takes over your role, and any parting thoughts for the membership as well?
Well, first of all, Governor Baker is a very smart, capable guy, loves college sports. He's like me or anybody else. He's going to have to learn a lot, but that's okay. Smart people and complicated jobs know how to do that, and he'll be good at it. I'm sure. He and I'll have some more conversations, and I'll be happy to provide him with any information or advice that he wants. That's what I'm committed to doing, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make him be successful. I think for him and for the membership, for everybody involved, the key issue is the one you and I talked about a minute ago. And that's really, what is this about for these athletes? Is this just sports entertainment, or is this sports entertainment in support of developing young men and young women? And that's been the balancing act in college sports since the very beginning. And it continues to need to be juggled. I hope that the membership, meaning the schools, the athletic departments, the presidents, keep their eye on that ball. I'm really proud of what's happened in terms of the academic success of athletes over the past dozen years. Virtually every year, graduation rates have gone up. They're at levels now that most people didn't think were possible. Every year we've seen an improvement in and focus on the health and well-being of athletes, and it's gotten better and better and better every year as attention's been turned to it. Now we're focusing a lot of effort on mental health, an area of great concern to the athletes. They need to keep that going. Every year the financial support has gotten greater for athletes. Their support in every fashion of their life, and that's been improving. That continuous improvement, while it's not sexy and dramatic, that's what's making a difference in the lives of athletes. And for me, that's always been what the bottom line is here. And I hope people keep that in mind.
Wise words indeed, and we appreciate the time, Mark. We could probably keep chatting for another 30 minutes if you'd be covering the course of your tenure, but we appreciate you taking the time here for what amounts to an excellent interview.
Great. Thanks very much. Good to talk to you, Bryan. Take care.
Thank you. For the final time, Dr. Mark Emmert, the outgoing NCAA president. Thank you.